Welcome to the Silver Creek Insights podcast. I'm your host, Felisa Wiley. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Nachiket Mehta, a seasoned data and analytics executive with over 2 decades of experience in transforming data ecosystem. He's passionate about bridging the gaps between software, product, AI, and strategy to drive meaningful business outcomes. Nachi, welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. So I have about 18, 20 years of experience in data analytics. Mostly served earlier in my career, started as a software engineer and then moved into data as a passion and solving a lot of business problems. That was really near and dear to me. I initially in my career, I played a lot of roles just serving data analytics in a consulting capacity for Fortune 500 companies. And then I had my own startup, Uber that connected home-based chefs to the foodies out there. And then I was also an investor in the company, the startup that we built the customer data platform and then grew and made a transaction. And then more recently, for 6 years, I was at Wayfair, where I led their data and analytics practice for global operations and enterprise functions. It's been a great ride, and I also believe in giving back to the community. So I'm a guest lecturer to Northeastern University, where I graduated from. By the way, I also graduated recently with my MBA from Purdue. And I also play some startup advisory roles to give it back to them.
So you are a man of many talents.
I'm trying. I try to work with people and data, but it's been a fun ride.
For sure. It's definitely an adventure, but it sounds like your career has taken a lot of twists and turns. And also, congratulations on getting your MBA and finishing
Thank you.
that. That is a huge accomplishment. But I want to rewind a little bit because you talked about founding a startup. So you found a startup. You led large scale data transformations at major e-commerce companies. What motivated these career transitions? And how did you know when it was time to shift?
Yeah, it's always been driven by impact and curiosity, right? So earlier in my career, when I worked and solved a lot of problems at Fortune 500 clients, I was making an impact by working directly on customer data platforms and driving that direct impact that increases the revenue. When I had my own startup, we identified this real world problem that we faced, like me and my co-founders and our family members, where we were tired of like eating the food in the restaurants where you don't find so many options, or families don't have time to cook at home, and then they're looking for some varieties globally, right? So that's where we reached out and created this platform to solve the real problem, right? We were eager to solve something. And then when I joined Wayfair, right, there was an opportunity to apply this startup lessons at scale. So I led the multi-year efforts of data mesh, just decentralizing the data functions to increase or to increase the velocity of decisions, or like migrated them from on-prem to Google Cloud. Uh, and there have been so business impact across the way, where the Wayfair was going through the pandemic with the hyperscale mode, and this foundations really helped. Or post pandemic, when the pressure was on optimization, cost or inventory optimization, or getting closer to the omni-channel strategy. So a lot of data and Gen AI for last 2 years were driving a lot of our enablement and to drive the business impact directly. So that has been a really a driving factor for me, the impact and curiosity. And then that has taken, and that's what I'm looking forward to, just with my MBA completed, like how I can continue to drive a similar impact at a much larger organization, or organization that are more forward thinking and innovative at solving real problems.
So you touched on a couple of different topics. So you said curiosity, impact, business decisions, and you also mentioned that when you worked with customer data, you were able to actually help improve revenue operations. Every business at the end of the day wants to make money. What is when you first started a new company and you're diving into the data, what are your first thoughts? Are you looking for, let me just understand the data, let me understand impact, let me try to figure out how to save this company money, or let me how to figure out how to drive business decisions? What's your strategy?
I think it really depends, right? I typically break it down into three parts, right? There is the people aspect, there is technology aspect, and there is a process aspect, and how you can
Mhm.
connect this to the ultimate purpose, right? The why. Like start with the why and what exactly that the company is trying to solve for the customers and how it brings more business value to, like, that's the major goal of all the companies, to increase the business value for the customers that they serve and the stakeholders and shareholders. So that I start there, connect a lot with the business executives and identify the core problems. It could be improving customer experience. It could be increasing revenue, saving cost, empowering teams to perform better, making decision making much easier and faster. So it really depends what are the primary drivers that they're driving, and then connect that to these three pillars that I talked about as people, process, and technology. Identify and create a vision out of it, and then connect that vision to the objectives, identify the key results, the KPIs that you can track, and then start
Yeah.
delivering into small incremental small wins for the.
And honestly, I think what you're talking about is something that has been learned throughout time. Because when I was first starting out in my career, hold on, sorry, I see my eye. When I was first starting out in my career, I didn't necessarily think in business decisions or strategies and KPIs. And it wasn't until one of my managers told me that I needed to track everything that I was like, oh, I need to actually like have like a
Yeah.
running list of everything I've ever worked on, when I worked on, what business decisions has helped drive, what were the outcomes. And it really helped restructure the way that I thought about work. Because, like, when you go in, like, you're fresh out of college, this was like way back when I was fresh out of college and looking, you don't know anything. What would your advice be to those new grads who are stepping into a new place? They've never like worked at a startup or like a large company before, and they're just trying to get things going.
Yeah, and everyone goes through that phase, right? I've gone through the same phase, right? Initially in my career, I thought that the technical excellence drives outcomes, right? And that's
Mhm.
what, like, you spend a lot of time in improving that data platform, improving the pipelines, changing the models so that that creates a value. But ultimately, you realize that if business teams don't get what you are delivering, they don't trust the data, they don't trust the outcomes, then it's as good as nothing. That doesn't matter, right? So you have, like, soft skills matter a lot, right? So just
Mhm.
understand the business value, the business connection that you are ultimately contributing to. Depends a lot on communication, stakeholder management, right? There are empathy. There's sometimes like stakeholders and they have their own challenges to drive certain business values, which they may not be getting the right support from their counterparts on technology or data AI functions. Aligning that strategy to the business goals is the foremost most important thing, and that's what, like, as a leader you can drive with the why, the purpose. You provide that clarity of the why to your team and also to the stakeholders, and show that you are making a continuous improvement, right? So I not only adopting that principle by myself as I was growing as a leader, but just transferring and sharing that, delegating that to the team members so they are also thinking about it much earlier in their career has helped a lot, right? Like you deliver much faster when everyone is moving in the same direction to achieve, instead of everyone having like different purpose in their own mind when that the purpose was not.
And you touched on something very interesting. You said alignment. Everyone working towards the same goals. As we both know, that doesn't always happen in companies without a clearly defined North Star. Do you have experience, or what was your experience like working with an organization that was just every department was siloed and there was really no clear unity?
You'll be surprised. That's a very common case in many larger organizations, right? Like smaller organizations, there are not much clarity or boundaries defined in roles. So
Mhm.
people step up and they try to wear multiple hats, and they still try to solve the problem. So when you go to larger organization, uh, there are a lot of decision makers, a lot of influencers in that decision makers, and then that happens a lot, especially when uh, they are not aligned all to the same goal, right? So especially data function, data and AI function, or analytics or product analytics aspect, they are mostly afterthought, right? Like, so that's another challenge when business comes up with a problem, they work with product engineering or services organization, they try to solve the problem, and then they think, how will we measure this? Can we use data to drive so and so decisions? And that happens a lot. So how you drive and embed the data into those functions as a proactive thought process instead of reactive changes a lot of that problem, right, and avoids the silos. And then there is this strategy that at least particularly with Wayfair, as they were going through the hyper growth phase, we applied is just decentralization, like the so-called data mesh. But we applied that and empowered the data ownership, the trust, the federated governance, right? Like through the enablement and not enforcement, right? Like those are like important criteria how you can change the culture beyond just the technology.
I completely agree. And what would you say is a mistake or challenge early in your career that, in hindsight, helped shape you into a strong leader?
Uh, I think one of the things that I mentioned is that just like I was thinking technology drives a lot of solutions, but it wasn't like it's not always the case, right? It's really the soft skills. And especially in this era where a lot of automation and scale is happening, like soft skills and empathy and communication matters a lot, right? So that's one thing I would definitely call out. Other is just the value part of it, and then like many times the data is an afterthought, and data is thought about as a cost center and
Yeah.
not an as an asset, right? Like so you need to bring the product thinking to the data and how you connect or and remove those boundaries. That goes along with.
So you've led teams through reorgs, architecture shifts, business pivots. How do you personally stay grounded during all of those moments of ambiguity or pressure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's more about just zooming out, right? Like
Mhm.
when you are going through a lot of that ambiguity or tough, challenging times, when you zoom out and look at like the big picture, again, I'll hop on the why, right? And asking and promoting that part. But that helps you that, okay, what are the ultimate reasons why you are going through this phase? I actually uh, met an author, an ex Navy SEAL person who wrote a book about it, Masters of Uncertainty, Rich Divini. And he had the framework in his book that he called out, right? Like anyone who is going through the fear that's contributed by two things, anxiety or uncertainty, right? And
Yeah.
then he created a framework called DPO, right? So you have uh, the the destination, yeah, figure out the destination, the pathway, and the outcome. Then just keep that clear, and then you create smaller wins. And he had a lot of stories to tell from his like SEAL days, right? He was part of SEAL Team 6, and then how like defining the smaller steps can help you achieve that goal. So that's important. Like it resonated me, I think 2 days back, right? So it's a timely thing. You can enable a lot of this kind of clarity to your team, to your stakeholders, so that everyone goes through that smoothly. I think other aspect that also helps is just maintain some form of routine. Right? So
Hmm.
if you have your routine, like your mentoring calls or journaling, spending time with family, kids, friends, stakeholders, just having that dialogue and getting that constant feedback or just distraction in sometimes like also helps you go through that anxiety or uncertainty. That I would say, and it evolves too, right? Like when you lead with purpose and perspective, like it, you can go through this journey easier.
Like that, lead with purpose and perspective. That might be the title of this episode. So thank you for dropping that line in there. And rewinding a little bit, because I agree with everything that you said, like staying grounded, finding your routines and family, it's so important. And you also mentioned earlier that it's like the soft skills and empathy that matter most moving forward in this age of AI technology and automation, and finding ways to continuously increase that compassion, whether it's like literally going outside and like listening to birds or like seeing how beautiful like nature is, taking, your, taking yourself away from like the technology that you use on a day to day also helps just like ground you. And I also think that in this world of I'm going to call it like tech egos, it's those people who are just like, the techie goes. It's so sad and scary to see people get so elevated because of the technology that they can create. And like, don't get me wrong, people have created amazing things, but it's like we need to remember that we are human first. always human
Mhm.
first. We are people to people, peer to peer, no matter who
Yeah.
you are. And if you don't treat people with respect, it's like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
what's the purpose? So soft skills are so important. Like, for those listeners out there, don't lean into that. Lean into your empathy, lean into your compassion, stay grounded, and do whatever you need to do to maintain those routines and that like inner like quote unquote person, because we can't lose that nowadays. We can't. We're technology's taking over. We're this is the only thing that we have right now. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
going back a little bit further, you mentioned that you've implemented a data mesh, right? So that's a both a technical and a cultural shift. What were the biggest challenges you faced in decentralizing data architecture, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah. So I always say this, but it is they call it socio-technical change, right? It's 80% cultural and people and process change and 20% technology.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough challenge, right? Like our initial goal was that it's a technology. I mean, initial understanding was that we'll implement this domain-driven design, just data as a product mindset, establish so and so technology enablement part, and then we will solve it, right? But it was a lot of effort to just like explain, right? Like how you solve the data ownership issues, right? Like there was silos. You mentioned about silos earlier, but there were like data producers, the engineers, the product teams, they produce data, but they don't know how that data is being used downstream at
Mm-hmm.
all, right? They rely on having some central team take care of the data. And then consumers, on the other hand, most of the time, like if things work fine, great. But if executives ask questions about, or there are decisions that's being impacted, like there is a lack of trust in the data because they don't know where the data is coming from, right? They will ask the next person, like the central team or an analyst, like, hey, what about this? But they will say, okay, we did this. The issue happens here, but it was really more upstream. Okay, check that. And then like you have that so many silos created where it takes so long to resolve that issue or find it a proper answer. So a couple of things we did was one to establish that understanding and cross-functional alignment across data producers and consumers, right? So we implemented something called embedded data engineering, right, where we had a central data engineering team, but they were landed resources as within the domains to change that data culture within engineers, right? So now software engineers, product teams, they are not just thinking about their transactional data and the applications, but they think data as a product in the first class
Mm-hmm.
citizen. And then there are platform aspect where we implemented something called data contracts, like systematic data contracts, not data dictionaries in some documents and stuff like that. So that changed the culture where before an engineer pushes a code, it tells them preemptively if they are going to break any data intensive applications downstream because it stops them in the CI/CD pipelines proactively, right? So, and then there are expectations on data quality from consumers, from the SLA expectations, and everything codified into that. So that brought them much closer to the consumer expectation instead of relying on like a central team to drive that. And then likewise, the consumers had this understanding of, hey, here are the core goal state or curated data that I'm consuming, and I know who the owner is. I trust this. I set my expectations, how I'm going to use this for what business value and purpose. And so now I have a higher trust and fidelity on the data that I'm consuming. And if there are any issues, I have a contract in place. So I will go to the person and then get the results if not proactively, reactively, but within shorter time frame, right?
Yeah.
So that those kind of changes helped a lot, right? So data mesh principle has this domain-driven design, the data as a product, the federated data governance piece. So not a central data governance team that is setting policies and regulations and all that everyone has to follow. Uh, if they don't follow, how do you measure that? You can't catch it, right? So we put that systematic enablement in the system using the self-service data platforms component. So that really helped change the culture aspect
Yeah.
of it because it is penetrated and integrated into everyone's day-to-day thought process. And then beyond this, there was also a planning part of it, right? Like so, when executives are planning their next business initiatives and use cases, a data part is embedded into that part as well. So everyone thinks about how can we use data to drive this decision, right? As a first class citizen instead of a reactive way
Mm-hmm.
where after the data was produced, right? And in the current era, right, where it's not just the customer and operations data that's being produced, right? You will have so much synthetic data that AI agents are producing, right? And what do you do with that, and how you isolate them? Like, that's becoming more and more challenge, right? And anyone who is getting on the AI bandwagon without having proper data foundations and governance figured out will have a big challenges.
No, I completely agree. Whenever a client comes to me and talks about like using AI, I'm like, well, let's first deal with the data quality issue you have, and let's look at your architecture and make sure that it could actually support it. Because when I hear people talk about like AI, all of like the agentic AI, generative AI, any AI thing buzzword, to me, it's just another application on top of everything else. And if you don't have a solid foundation, that's going to crumble. And then this is not going to work, because if you don't have quality data, if you don't have like those guardrails in place to get started, you shouldn't even be looking up here. You need to be focused on the bottom of the pyramid first. That's going to last for all of eternity. There's a reason why AI is a part of computer science, and it's not like everything. It's just another part of
Correct.
it. Um, Walk me through. We talked about this before, the interview, but walk me through the shift left approach, and
Yeah.
in the context of embedded data engineers with domain teams.
Yeah. So it was very transformational approach, right? I think there was an element of having a central team that takes care of all data problems for
Mm-hmm.
the producers, on behalf of consumers, but there's no accountability, there is no ownership, there is no lineage, right? So that was the fundamental issue that we were trying to solve, right? Like how we can have better data quality, agility, business alignment, and things like that. What we did was, and then we incorporate this into whatever the organizational processes that are around there. From technology perspective, there is architecture decision records that are being made and maintained, right? So you kind of connect with the persona. Like if you're talking to the engineers or product teams, you talk in their language and explain them why this is necessary. Again, the why comes here. And then kind of lay out a checklist of sort that says, okay, this needs to happen before you say you are done. Your definition
Mm-hmm.
of done of releasing something needs to cover this. And hey, by the way, we are just embedded teams as a SWAT Delta Force kind of team that's there as a temporary until you get up to speed in treating data as a product. And then once you are up to speed and up and running, then next domain and next domain. And that's how you penetrate and change the culture. And then everyone is thinking about data as a first class citizen and data as a product, not just for their transactional systems, but they also think about the analytical use cases and how
Mm-hmm.
they will be used and who are using them and why they are using it. So that cultural change was done from data producer side. And then similarly on consumer side, right? Like where instead of getting data, like we had more than 950,000 tables and views in our cloud ecosystem, right? So there's a lot of sprawl, right? You don't need that much data and tables, but how do they trust, right? There's a less than 1% that had the owners identified. So how do you improve that trust, that guarantee the lineage to show that where your data is coming from, and if there are any issues, here are the expectations, the contracts set. So that drove a lot of value and impact to the consumers where they could do better. And then this translates into the business impact, right? Like we went through a lot of different business challenges over the 6 years where in a hyper growth mode, like we needed to support this to the business scale, right? Like where customers are ordering a lot of orders and then they see the inventories out of stock and now they are losing revenue. So how you can optimize your inventory and
Mm-hmm.
talk to suppliers and guide them what inventory is in more demand versus not in the geographies. There are instances where we had a lot of frauds happening from returns perspective because then you, in order to give you a better customer experience, like no questions asked returns, but then there are bad actors in the system, and those bad actors are causing fake returns, right? So how you identify that using the data in a quick manner before it's too late, and how you monetize the returns part of it. So we could drive a lot of business value enablement when these foundations were set properly. And
Yeah.
then on the customer service, then like you can build agent co-pilots or you use it on like internal tech transformation things. So there are a lot of other value that we drove that really impacted the dollar value for business at the end.
No, so let me recap because you hit a lot of points. Let me just see if I could recap this. So, and I'm gonna take what you said, but I'm gonna push it in terms of the impact of data quality and team dynamics. So, from what you're saying, teams finally have a direction. They have their why, which completely transforms their passion, their drive, like knowing like what you're solving and knowing that it matters really like changes how a data engineer comes into work. Like we've all been there. We've all worked for a job where we like know what we're doing, but we're like, why does this matter? This isn't like that. How is this driving change? And sometimes the team itself doesn't actually know how it's going to drive change and the manager doesn't know. They're just telling you exactly what to do. But when you have a why and you have that purpose and you have that intent behind the action, as a data engineer, I feel so much more empowered because I know that this is going to drive something important that improves the lives of others, which is all that I want to do. So there's that. Then you also broke down between like producers and consumers. Could you walk me through again? The consumers in this sense are like the leadership teams, right?
It could be anything. So I think what we did was we simplified. Like there are a lot of different user personas. You have
Yeah.
executive leadership, you have middle management, you have data analyst looking to kind of get the insights and give that insight to their bosses. You have data engineers or another software engineering team, right? So what we did was we simplified this whole thing into just saying is there is a data producer and there is the data consumer persona. And that
Yeah.
depends on a use case. For a particular use case, you are either a producer or a consumer. For a
Yeah.
different use case, the consumer who consumed data from somebody and they're transforming that data for whatever the business, the wide purpose, they become the producer if somebody else is getting that data and they are consumer. So we kept it very fluid intentionally, but made sure that the federated governance was applied here, where anytime a data asset is taken from a producer, and then a consumer is doing something with it, and if they are changing the form of it, they become the producer, they become the owner of that data. And now
Okay.
they have to abide by the same expectation that they are expecting their upstream data producers to do that, right? So eat your own dog food. And we started that with the central data engineering team who were in the front and center of a lot of these data problems. But then that culture change transpired into any function, any roles, right? But ultimately, these personas of data producer and consumer were defined based on the use case.
Okay.
So, yeah.
No, thank you for that clarification. That helps. Now I'm curious. With the advancement of AI, how do you foresee the roles of producer versus consumer evolving?
Yeah. So I think it's what happens is that AI, there's a lot of data easily accessible. You can just let AI get the data through automation. And again, by the way, data engineering will go through a lot of automation if they have already gone through it. But what makes sense is the owner of the data needs to be aware. And that's where like you don't need so many silos or so many middlemen to get there. You can get the trusted data quickly and start bringing insights and making decisions and have a conversation with it, right? As a anyone could have, right? So, for example, we automated like so a typical decision making process using data driven organization or data is that you ask a plain simple English question, somebody needs to understand the context, they take that context, write a SQL query or look into the report, create a report if that doesn't exist based on the results they get, explain that, and then give it back in some form of report, model, or answer plain in English, right? A lot of the silos can be removed now if you do the proper data foundations aligned to the proper ontology and a stitch together. Now you have a conversational chatbot that we created that removed like 95% of the time that it used to take just to answer that question when you're trying to make that business decision. Hey, what's happening in the network uh, based on this weather forecast, right? Why there is a congestion in this network, or why our NPS is going down after we introduce this new product, right? Like all that connections are out there. Your data is there, and now this intelligence system is aware that what you are asking as a leader, you know the cross-functional stitching. So you can
Yeah.
ask questions not just by the domain, you can even have cross-functional domain, and it will figure out why NPS is impacted because a new product was released for the customer service or on the front end website or something.
So, in a sense, with the technological advances around AI and how it's going to evolve data roles, is it appropriate to say that you're now viewing data as a thermostat rather than a thermometer?
Yeah, yeah. So that's I've spoken about that a couple of times, and that was one of our kind of punchlines as well with Wayfair. Data is our thermostat, and the reason why it's that is thermometer tells you what the temperature is, right? And then so similarly, most data-driven companies were using that. That BI function stays that tells you what is the state of the current business, and you have BI and dashboard that tells you that. Thermostat stat is something that you can adjust, and you can drive what temperature you want so that you're comfortable in that, right? So you can proactively use the data, and so that you can make more predictive decisions or drive the business the way you want to drive to
Mhm.
achieve the value out of it, right? So that's why data is as a thermostat instead of a thermometer. Both are important depending on the situation, but you use it reactively or descriptively versus predictive and prescriptively. I think that's where the distinction comes. And then the future of data really is so powerful that you can make proactive decisions to take care of some things that before they happen to the business.
And I like that comment and that distinction before it happens by having AI turning data from a thermometer, which you were like, oh, that's passive, and thermostat's more reactive. It enables the systems to not only detect these patterns but make those real time decisions, adapt with the new data input, and keep that ball like turning. It's like an ever growing thing. It's actually kind of like human like in a way where humans were constantly changing, we're constantly growing, and like Nachi, the way that you are today is probably not what you were like or who you were a year ago or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you're evolving with whatever data inputs you're getting from the world, whether it's like comments from
Yeah.
your family, something that you've learned from your MBA program. And with AI, data is doing the same thing. It's taking in those inputs. Oh, something changed. We need to adapt, but we don't need a human to like take note of that outlier. We could just fine tune it ourselves. And I think that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and that's what's happening, right? Like right now, if you have those smart thermostats, right? Like it's not just what the temperature you set, but they have sensors and they will learn from your behavior and they will
Mhm.
set the temperature accordingly, right? So you don't even have to decide when you are home, do this, when you are away, do this. It will identify that piece. And even within when you are home, the cost associated, the cost efficiency, savings, and all, it will make those decisions proactively.
Which just makes me wonder. I'm thinking about like 40 years from now. How cool would it be if the world was just automated and like we can just relax and chill and not work?
That's everyone's dream, right?
We can imagine a world where like your smart home refrigerator is like, oh, you're out of milk and you use this amount of percentage of the entire cart every single day. Let me order it from the store, order it from like DoorDash or something to have it automatically delivered. And then it's like you wake up and they're like, oh, you have a stuff. No, you're getting congested. It's allergies, not a cold. Take this
Mhm.
medication. And oh no, she slept through her first alarm and she's going to miss her soul cycle class. Let's make the second alarm louder. Just imagine if the entire world was just automated and like every bit of your life, every bit of business was just like accounted for and everything was just like adjusting to your needs at that time. How fun would that be?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that is already in action, right? If you think
Yeah.
about if you can configure like Alexa to order from Amazon, health has a huge opportunity, right? Like you have congestion, like how does it identify? I mean, there's a fine line to the data privacy, security, and kind of getting inside the privacy aspect of it. So the technology is there. I think now we have to go through that culture change and then just
Mhm.
acceptance part of it. And that's where leading companies kind of drive that culture change, like Apple.
For
But
sure.
otherwise, I mean, other thing that's also important is the purpose, right? I think
Mhm.
yes, nobody would like everyone would like to just sit at the beach and relax and do that for how long, right? You will do that, you'll enjoy that for a week, 2 weeks, a month, but then you want to drive or do something, contribute back to the society or for your own growth. And that's what's driven by your purpose, your drive, your passion, right? So I don't think everything will be replaced that way, right? Like humans will be augmented and not replaced. Uh, but they will also grow, and then they will identify a new problems to solve, the new businesses that circles around that, and then there will be kind of there'll be human workforce and digital workforce will be working in conjunction with each
I'm kind of excited. I know you're like, oh, we could relax on the beach for a week, but I'm like, I could do that for a month.
other.
No, but I completely agree. We're just going to have to shift the way that we live, the way that we think about work. And we'll just see what happens. I mean, I'm hopeful. I know that I'm leaning into my humanity, and I know that through like the podcast, I get to meet others who I know also like have the same values that I do when it comes to technology. So I just hope that we're the leaders that help drive the impact and the change and make it so that it's all just ethical and we're just good and we're not like I don't know, like cutting corners or stepping over people and just being mean. And I don't know. I want us to be the leaders. That's all that I know at the end of the day. But you recently concluded your tenure at Wayfair and completed your MBA. Like huge accomplishments. Like congratulations on everything that's going on in your life. What are you looking for in your next opportunity, and how do you plan to continue making an impact in data and AI?
There are lots of opportunities out there. I think what we have done, like as an innovation with Wayfair and with my previous experience, I've gained a lot of experience in technology and now just embedding that with my business and finance acumen. And in the current world of AI, which is a lot of data and AI goes together, there are so many messy business problems out there that I can solve with data, AI, and the talent part, right? Like I think human workforce or digital workforce are here to stay. So that's what I'm focused on. I'm networking a lot. I'm identifying what is that next opportunity where I can make a bigger impact, right? Many times people spend very little time to find their next opportunity, but then they end up spending many years of their life after that. So small decision, not thought out, like, and then you spend on giving so much time. So that's the area that I'm really trying to decide what it is that really drives me. It connects with my personal values. It resonates with the business values and the leadership values, and then drive that impact. So I think that's what I'm really focused on right now. In parallel, I'm also actively advising. I'm in an advisory role, so I continue to work on that front, and then like continue to drive the change out there. But really, I think my passion is like how I can make organizations AI ready, right? Through the
Mhm.
better data integrity, better strategy, platform thinking, and governance.
So whatever you're going to end up doing, you're just going to kill it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to make sure to put all of your contact information in the show notes, and we're also going to try to do some outreach for you. So very excited to see what you do, and I actually hope to catch up with you in I don't know 6 months, 1 year, and I can't wait to like hear about your next journey. But
Yeah.
are you ready for some rapid fire questions?
All right, let's do it. I'm not ready, but we'll take on.
You got this. And so for this section, I'm not going to ask a follow up question, which I love doing. But we're just going to see what we can get through. And if I find something interesting, I might ask another question after. But I have 7 questions for you. What is one data term you wish people would stop using?
Data as a product. They need to leave it and not just not keep using it without meaning what a data product or data as a product means.
Okay. If you could automate one part of your day to day life, what would it be?
I'm already automating a lot of stuff right now using chatbot and all. It helps tremendously. I think this is a very used answer, but just like some of the mundane, some routine stuff like doing laundries and like the cleaning and stuff like that, like where you're still dependent on other humans or yourself. I think that is a huge potential. I'm really looking forward to Optimus or any new robotics AI comes up to the rescue. But otherwise, I don't want to take up and automate the the soft part, right? That like you spend time, quality time with your friends, family, kids, you give something back to the community, the gratitude aspect. I mean, that a lot of that, and even work, right? Like somebody who enjoys doing the work for the passion, like that shouldn't be automated. And that's where the fine line with the automation and the repetition of the work and that automation.
What is one tech buzzword that you secretly love?
Yeah, I can't think of one right now. I mean, there are so many, but I don't know. Is the I think automation, maybe. I think there's a huge opportunity for automation in many areas, especially like a
Mhm.
larger enterprises have done, but not many. So automation comes to mind first. Innovation is the second. Uh, yeah,
Okay. You're starting a new data team tomorrow. Who's your first hire? A data engineer, a product manager, or a cultural glue person?
that's a good question. It really depends. It depends on what I'm stepping into and what are their problems they're trying to solve, right? Like just going back to our earlier conversation, like first thing is I want to understand what the business problems I'm trying to solve. If the business is set on the technology part and they really need a change agent and going through the change management and all that, I would hire somebody who is a glue person, right? And
Mhm.
if they have a good culture set up, they have a good understanding, people are nice because some companies like invest a lot on the cultural aspect, but they are still like old from technology perspective and they need a modern data and AI and they want to be AI ready. Maybe I'll hire somebody who is still has a leadership mindset with strong technology background. Or it could be, depending on the problem, somebody who complements me, right? Like, so I don't want the similar skills like me, but somebody who complements me for the skills that I don't.
Comment, but this is rapid fire. I can't do that. Okay. The biggest myth about data strategy that drives you nuts.
Biggest myth about data strategy. I think a lot of people talk about data governance, like, and then they have like a lot of investment in data governance. And I think so traditional way of implementing the governance by enforcement.
Hmm.
Uh, I I strongly I have strong opinions, loosely held, on that subject. So that's one that's something that immediately came to my mind. But your question was biggest myth that
The
uh,
biggest myth
I want
about
to.
data strategy that drives you nuts.
Yeah, I think that's the one I would say. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's also a cultural change, right? I think, and this applies to not just data strategy. I think it's just any technology strategy or any business strategy, right? Like people don't account for the change management as much as they focus on the technology problems alone. So that's a big one.
For sure. If you weren't in tech, what would you be doing now?
I I would be I would be in healthcare. I would be, and I don't have the skills. I don't, but I'm very interested primarily because my wife is in healthcare, and
Mm.
I hear a lot from her how she's helping patients, and there is that instant gratification of the changes that she's making versus technology. The change takes longer, right? Like you still have to depend on other the influencers, other key leaders to really notice the change versus in healthcare. Like there's so much opportunity and you can drive a bigger changes much faster and bring really improvement to people's lives.
And then finish the sentence. The future of data is.
Is great and will be enhanced even further with AI buzz and AI future.
I agree. Okay, so now that we finished the rapid fire, I want to go back to the one that you meant about you spoke about starting a team together. I know I'm so bad at these. You brought up a lot of points. As we know, the job market is meh. The job market in tech is always eh. But and you hear this all the time, like, oh, you apply to hundreds of jobs on LinkedIn, half of them are like bots, and you never hear back from them. But I don't think people realize it's like it's more than about that resume. It's like what you mentioned. It's like, does this person complement me? Does this person have skills that the team currently lacks? And there's so many moving bits and pieces of the puzzle. Like there's so many that can do like the same amount of work, but it's those soft skills or like being a little bit more technical than the team that you're currently going after that also is taken into consideration, but you don't necessarily like see that as an applicant. What would your advice be to these young people who are just to people in tech who are just applying, but not really, they're feeling like demoralized because of all the applications that they're sending out. Well, what's your advice for them?
Yeah, no, I think have patience, right?
Yeah.
Believe in yourself. There's definitely change. We are going through a transformation right now. right? So adapt that, right? Like learn, right? I feel proud in saying I'm a lifelong learner. Like I get so energized, like my eyes lit up when I'm there to learn something new, whether it's at work, whether it's at home with friends, whoever. Like when something learning, I have a long list of to-dos to learn more than I can kind of do, right? So always be a learner and just do that in a smaller increment. Then before you know, you'll be a different person uh, in no time. Right? So continue doing it, believe in yourself. Specific to job market, if you are applying, use different strategies. AI, use AI to your perusal, right? You can use AI tools out there to make sure that you don't have to lie, but you can update your resume so that it resonates with the other person on the other hand, to showcase what you have done that is relevant to what they are looking for. And then
Hmm.
try to have like those open dialogue. Ask the recruiter, like recruiter is your friend, just ask them like what problems they're going through, or hiring manager or the person, and then try to articulate your answers based on that.
Beautiful answer and a beautiful way to end the interview. Nachi, thank you so much for your time, your thoughts. I adore the way that you think, and you've also given me so much to reflect on. So, thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you feel better. You still have a great energy despite going through this congestion. So
Thank
take care.
you.